Yo, what is up guys? It's me exactly, back for you guys yet another video, but we got 7 games of NBA action to go over today, so let's just get right into it. I think that outside of winning an NBA championship, one other thing that most high-level NBA players look forward to is getting selected to their first All-Star game. I'd imagine that it would give them a great sense of validation, that all the hard work that they put in to play at a high level is finally being recognized league-wide, and that now they're invited to play with the best of the best, especially in today's NBA, where because of all of the great talent that is left out of the All-Star game on a yearly basis, making the All-Star game is actually turning out to be quite a big accomplishment. And every year, at least one player will make it to the All-Star game for the first time. And sometimes even more than one player every year makes their first All-Star appearance. And while watching this Nuggets vs Raptors game last night and watching Nikola Jokic continue to dominate, I started thinking, well, I wonder which players will make the All-Star game for the first time this year. And here are a couple of names that I came up with. To start off, the player who has the highest chances of being a first-time All-Star this season has to be Nikola Jokic. Jokic is the best player on the Denver Nuggets, who are currently one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And after beating the Raptors last night in a game where Jokic tallied 23 points, 15 assists, and 11 rebounds, the Nuggets have won their last 6 games in a row. So while the team's success, assuming that the Nuggets keep playing this well leading up to the All-Star break, will help Jokic attend his first ever All-Star game later this year, the fact that besides Anthony Davis, he has been the second best big in the Western Conference should also help his case. On the year so far, Jokic is averaging just under 17 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists per game. And at just 23 years old, he can already probably claim the title of one of the best passing big men of all time. The man is the only center in NBA history to have at least 15 assists in a single game. And what's more is Jokic has already accomplished that feat 3 times in his career, twice this year, while once again, no other big in NBA history has even done it once. It's not even just the fact that Nikola Jokic racks up a lot of assists for an NBA center, but it's also how the man goes out there and gets these assists. He makes some of the most beautiful passes. Beautiful, yet completely effortless. There's some of the most effortless passes that I have ever seen. You can name guys like Rajon Rondo, Chris Paul, LeBron James, Ben Simmons, and any of the other elite passers in the league, and Jokic is right up there with them in terms of skill. So I don't think there's any doubt at all that he will be attending his first All-Star game this February. The next player that I want to mention though is Tobias Harris. And as a player that I really liked during his time in Detroit, I'm not going to lie by saying that he isn't the player that I personally want to see make the All-Star game the most this year. I really want to see Tobias Harris get in, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he doesn't, and that's because, first off, he's in the loaded Western Conference. I mean, Paul George almost didn't make the All-Star team last year until players started getting injured. So you can imagine the uphill battle that Tobias Harris has in front of him if he wants to make it. And that is why I think the only hope Harris has of making the All-Star team is if the Clippers are still a top 3 team in the Western Conference by the time the All-Star break rolls around, because Harris is the best player on the Clippers. And if LA is still atop the Western Conference, then they kind of have to let the top player from a top team in the Western Conference make the All-Star game, and coaches usually like to reward players on winning teams, so I can't see why they wouldn't reward Tobias Harris. But it's sad that even though the guy is having the best season of his career, averaging 22 points and 8 rebounds per game, that it's still iffy as to whether or not he will make the All-Star team. I think this one might be a given, so I'm not going to talk about it much, but next up is Ben Simmons. A lot of people felt that he should have been in the All-Star game last year, especially with all of the replacements from the East who were selected, but for one reason or another, he wasn't. This year though, I don't think that there's any way Simmons won't make the All-Star game, and I think that's pretty much very well known at this point. And the next player is Chris Middleton, and I think he falls into a similar situation as Tobias Harris, but not quite, since I think the Bucks do have a better shot than the Clippers to remain one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Right now, they are the 2nd seed in the East with a 15-7 record, and the only All-Star in their team for the past couple of seasons has been, of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo. But the entire NBA world now acknowledges the fact that Middleton is the Bucks' 2nd star. But with that being said, just like Tobias Harris, I think it's going to be pretty tough for Chris Middleton to get in, even if he is an all-star caliber player. Earlier in the season, this guy was way more of a sure thing, but now I'm not 100% sure. But next up is Zach LaVine. See, through the first 10-ish games of the season, even though the Bulls weren't winning much, LaVine was personally turning heads, dropping 30-point game after 30-point game, while at the same time being extremely efficient from the field. I believe LaVine became the first Bulls player since Michael Jordan to score 30+ points for each of the first 4 games of the season. So he got out to a great start, but since then, LaVine has cooled down a bit. He's still having some high scoring games and is averaging 25 points per game on the year, but his efficiency has gone down a lot, which was to be expected, as there was no way that he'd be able to keep at the same pace that he started off the season with. That being said, I personally would really like to see LaVine in the All-Star game this year, as he is a player that would be fun to watch, but the Bulls' record and the dip in his efficiency, especially with his outside shooting, could end up costing him a spot this year. But then again, when selecting, the coaches do have to take pure talent into consideration, and also they should acknowledge the fact that Zach LaVine is on the Chicago Bulls. You can't really knock him for not winning when he's on the Chicago Bulls. What do you want the man to do? Look at the team. He has Cameron Payne on his team. You expect him to win games. That's it though. Those are the players who I can most easily see making the All-Star game for the first time in their careers this year. Another player I wanted to talk about is Mike Conley, but then I was looking over the guard situation in the Western Conference, and I was like, Mike Conley's always been great, and the Grizzlies have always been, except for last year, been doing about the same thing they've been doing this year. Mike Conley hasn't made it in the past, so I really think it's going to be hard for him to make it this year too. He could be the best player in NBA history to never make an All-Star game. But now with that out the way, let's take a quick look at the rest of the games from last night. I can't imagine how hard it must be to play 3v5 in the NBA, and that those 3 players you have in your team are literally the only players who actually contribute. That's what the Pelicans had to deal with in this game against the Clippers. As with Nikola Mirotic out with an illness, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, and Julius Randle did a solid 97.3% of the work for New Orleans. The other 2.7% was done by the ball boys, who were responsible for making sure those 3 guys stayed hydrated enough during the game. Randle dropped 37 points, Holiday dropped 32 to go along with 14 assists, and AD was typical AD with 23 points, 13 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. Yet, despite all of that, the Pelicans still lose 129 to 126 to the Clippers. Look, forget about adding another star player to New Orleans, just add a better bench, some better role players, just anyone. Next up though, the OKC Thunder just humbled the Detroit Pistons, as OKC easily snapped the 5-game winning streak of Detroit with the 110-83 win. The Pistons just couldn't get any of their shots to fall, credit to OKC's defense. Detroit only shot 33% from the field and 18% from 3. And this is also why I try not to talk about the Pistons or give them preferential treatment on this channel, because anytime I mention that they start playing well, something like this happens. Yep, the first ever head-to-head matchup between Stephen Curry and Trae Young, and it went just about as well as you thought it would go. It did seem like Trae Young was trying to prove himself and send a message just a little too much on the offensive end, because in the end, he might have wound up hurting the team more than helping the Hawks, as his shot wasn't really falling and he also turned the ball over a lot as well. Still though, he did finish the game with 20 points, but the Warriors win easily, 128 to 111. Curry with 30 points on the night. The Minnesota Timberwolves were able to come back in this game, as after a terrible first half, they actually played well in the second half. Well enough at least to be able to beat the Rockets, 103 to 91. Karl Anthony Towns with 24 points and 11 rebounds. A big third quarter where they outscored the Knicks 34 to 19 was just enough for the Wizards to eke out the 110 to 107 win in this one. Bradley Beal getting it done with 27 points. And finally, the newest member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Alec Burks, came up big down the stretch in this one, as it was his dunk in the final seconds that got Cleveland the 99 to 97 win over Brooklyn. Clarkson though was the guy for the Cavs for the majority of the night, as he scored 20 points to go along with 11 rebounds. And that is going to bring us to the player of the day, where you guys have the opportunity to vote for who you think was the best player in the league last night by clicking the little eye icon in the top right hand corner of the video. Just remember though, the only players whose team won are eligible to win player of the day, and yesterday that player was none other than Anthony Davis and his 36 points, 19 rebounds, and 8 assists. That is going to do it for this video though, guys. Hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, then why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell as well, so you don't miss out on more daily NBA videos. Thank you once again for watching though. You guys already know that you are the real MVPs, and until next time, I'm out of here. Peace!